Yes, as we continue to watch with horror the floods that had overtaken several locations across the south and middle belt areas of Nigeria, NINAS invites everybody to take a closer look of and at what is happening. Is it just natural disaster that could not have been foreseen by anybody? The answer is no, because it has happened before. 2012, there have been, various degrees of the same thing happening, across maybe lesser expanse of spaces. But from what we see now, we saw the videos from Kogi down to Delta, down to Bayelsa. Pathetic. Benue, everywhere. And so we begin to ask, how did it come to this? Is it that we didn't, because it's something that has happened a number of times and becomes particularly worse on some occasions. We then began to see the back end of the story about Cameroon releasing water from their Lagdo Dam. But Cameroon also notified Nigeria that that water will be, that dam will be released, to ease off water. On closer examination, we begin to see that that dam was constructed in 1982. The agreement for how to manage the water when it is released was signed between Cameroon and Nigeria in 1977. And Nigeria was supposed to build a kind of, a dam that would take that water on the side of Nigeria when released from the side of Cameroon, so it doesn't flow into Nigeria in the manner we have seen, causing damage to dwellers on the water banks. So that we can put things in perspective and take them in the sequence they occurred. This agreement for what will happen with the dam when Cameroon will build it, what will happen on the side of Nigeria, the agreement was signed in 1977. But Nigeria was busy inviting the world to come and dance in Festac. Cameroon finished that construction in 1980, their own construction in 1982. Let's also remember that it's in that period that Land Use Act came in 1978. Then 1979 Constitution came after the Constituent Assembly of 1977. In all that period, it was that caliphate that was deploying Obasanjo on all kinds of fronts that was driving what was happening in Nigeria. Let's not kid ourselves. Not that Obasanjo is completely absolved of blame, but who is the controller of that Nigeria that didn't do its part in the period, the critical period? Okay, you didn't do it from 77. By 1982, Cameroon built its part. But it wasn't 1982 that the first time they will have the need to release water from the dam, nobody would. But a number of times, floods happened in such a way that was confusing. It was only down the road that it became something. People, of course, some talked about climate change and then water level rising, people running their mouth in Abuja. It was, upon closer examination that we began to see the Cameroonians, particularly after the 2012 incident. And in that 2012, of course, there was a Jonathan that was president. When the flood might have receded, election was already knocking at everybody's window. And 2015 came, our man Buhari then took over. So we're saying that going by what happened in 2012 in terms of the damage, the extent of damage recorded from that overflow of water that Nigeria did not contain, it is inconceivable that a people who know that such could happen again will not do anything at all. And that's why we now beam the Searchlights, because it was after that 2012 incident that the full consequence of what could go wrong if this compensating dam or this containment dam is not built. It was after 2012 that the full consequence, became manifest for all to see. Jonathan left when he was chased out in 2015, and from that 2015 to now, we're talking about 7 years. We are back to the flood that has now caused a lot more damage than what we saw in 2012. And the federal authorities, the ones sitting in Abuja, are just carrying on as if nothing is. We see in other countries where flash floods or all kinds of things happen and 2-3 people, become casualty of it. And the president of the US, for instance, the president will leave whatever he's doing to go to the place. It's such an extraordinary emergency that water will be allowed, water will come and do the kind of havoc. You see all the kind of things they immediately put in place. Look at what is going on in Nigeria now and see they are still talking about NEMA and who will approve, and when people are dying by the hour. People need what they don't have water to drink. They are stranded, left all to themselves. And that Nigeria is still discussing the election. We're just coming from 8 months of university shutdown. Are we blind not to see that if the objective of Boko Haram is to shut down Western education, and the champion of that Boko Haram is our president, we are now feeling surprised that our university system will be shut down for the kind of stupid reasons we have seen coming out of the mouth of one Ngige in Abuja. As it is with that education, so it is with this flood and all that should have been happening. So we come to the suspicion that there's a deliberate desire, there's a deliberate orchestration from the owners of Nigeria, the caliphate invaders, from those who control Nigeria at this time, to have these territories submerged. Oh, is it Samuel Ortom that will then cry to Abuja to come to help the Samuel Ortom and the thief people that are to be wiped out? Abuja will now come and salvage them from inside water that come from across. They will in fact ask Cameroon to leave to open the dam permanently until nobody is standing. That's the kind of thing they will do. That's what we suspect is going on. And that brings us to the urgency of the situation we have to deal with. We have to take charge of our space and responsibility for ourselves in those spaces. The Nigeria that is pretending to be managing our affairs is now under the control of the enemy that seeks our extermination. Benue should understand that. Bayelsa should understand that. Kogi should understand that. All the Delta should understand that. We can pretend for how much we like, but the basis of our conclusion is that if the peoples of the South and Middle Belt were to be in charge of mitigating this kind of disaster that is sure to come, that can be anticipated. Cameroon wrote their letter. What did anybody do with it? What did the people who received it do with it? And so, if we say that it is possible, if we say we suspect that it is deliberate, the damage being inflicted is being aggravated by the deliberate desire of those who should have mitigated. If we say so, it is because we have historical antecedents. Remember the Aba revolution, the women revolution of 1929. They called Aba riot. No, riot. It was just a revolution, a revolt against British colonial, brigandage in Nigeria, in that part at least. And so the British, they faced the very serious challenge that now began to lead to the push for independence. Then by 1949 in Enugu, at the coal miners' revolt in Enugu that led to shooting and then escalating the demand for independence, leading to 1950-51 discussions that ended in an Ohoro's motion for independence in 1953. We are tracing a trajectory of this same enemy stretching all the way to Buckingham Palace in the UK, the British Crown, and their local agents, the Caliphate in Nigeria. The response that Enugu got for the coal miners' revolt, the response that Aba got for the women revolution, came down to flooding those two, flooding. In the case of Aba, the Aba that is under the rot we see today was because at the time the expressway from Enugu to Port Harcourt was being constructed by Fujirol, is a French company, the stretch of the road that passes behind Aba, in the area where there's railway crossing and the motor paths, the Aloji kind of, from Osisioma to the Aloji stretch, that stretch of that express road was built far higher above what the ground level is for Aba on the left-hand side. Now, all the water from Aba will flow into the right-hand side of that express, because that is where you now begin to go towards the Atlantic through River State, Eche, and all of that. And so that was the natural waterways. That was natural course of water leaving Aba. So when you raised that, when you built that express and raised, the level so high above the level of Aba town, and you did not put in culverts underneath that express to take those waters through their natural ways into the larger bodies of water that discharge into the Atlantic Ocean. It was a deliberate decision of the proprietors of Nigeria to flood Aba. There was a research on this subject that led to that outcome, that it was deliberate to lock in the waters so that in one rainy season, Aba came under serious flood. The whole of Port Harcourt Road and surrounding, I'm sure some of us heard about Ndiegoro water. As if water came from the heavens and poured into Aba. It wasn't because any larger quantum of water came from the heavens. It was because the wicked Nigerian state decided, as part of how to weaken Aba from after the devastation of the war and all of what they did to punish this. We remember what happened, the incident in Ngwa High School in the closing months of the war. And so Aba was punished by that flooding. All the attempts, all the freeze, everything everybody had been doing. Mbakwe cried to Shagari at the time. They called him weeping governor. When the situation overwhelmed him and the state, the old Abia, the old Imo state that is now Imo and Abia and Ebonyi. And so you go to Enugu, because of the action of those coal miners, the British authorities flooded the coal mine in Enugu so that even the mine, the Oji River power plant that depended on coal, the commercial value of the coal of Enugu was rendered, was diminished by that flooding, deliberate flooding. And so if we say, many may not think in this direction, but those who have been looking for why things are the way they are in Nigeria, a lot of findings are there to be made about the wickedness of the of what has become the Nigerian state against sections of the country they consider enemy. They are still fighting their war that they began in 1967 against all manners of people. And so we are just informing ourselves that the earlier we brace up and take charge of our spaces in terms of our sovereignty to now be the ones to decide what could be happening in those spaces, the better for us. If we do not, the people running the enterprise they call Nigeria, our sovereignty aggregated and confiscated against our will. They are not looking out for our interests. If they have their way, they will flood us into extinction. We are the ones in that danger. We can't be running around there talking election with them at the time of existential threat of this magnitude. Let us wake up from our slumber and know that election will not solve these problems. Let us make a dash for our sovereignty, for our ownership and control of our spaces, so that we can do the best we can to give ourselves a better future and our children. I think we can stop there.